salen, please be quiet. Meeting is set. Welcome to Samfundsmøte, Understanding Norwegians. Norway is a small country with good, bad and some strange qualities. What is koselig, and does it differ from hyggelig? What is the deal with roller skis, and why do we care so much about what others think that we would organize an event like this? A country known for its fjords and mountains, modern architecture and design, Norway has been described as one of the best countries in the world to live in. However, there is a strange backside to Norwegian culture. Russ, personal space, and an obsession with tacos are integrated parts of life here in Norway, but might be difficult to understand from the outside. Sometimes it's even hard to understand it as a Norwegian. Therefore, we hope that everyone will get a little bit closer to understanding Norwegians by the end of tonight. To get to the bottom of this, we have to bring in the experts, people who have experienced Norway and Norwegians firsthand. Therefore, we'll be joined tonight by Julian Borrell, who has authored the Social Guidebook to Norway, and Gulbuddin Sukanwar, who works at Litteraturhuset with Culture for Inclusion. My name is Eirik Sande, and I will be the chairman of this meeting.
My name is Torin Gurke, and I will be the secretary for the meeting today. The board proposed the following agenda. Point 1, meeting is set. Point 2, board's protocol. Point 3, political 5 minutes. Point 4, introduction by Gulbuddin Sukanwar. Point 5, introduction by Julian Borrell. Point 6, artistic entertainment by the Student Society Symphony Orchestra. Point 7, break. Point 8, sofa chats with questions from the hall. Point 9, any other business. Point 10, meeting feedback. And point 11, meeting is adjourned. Can Storsson approve the board's proposition for the agenda?
Before we begin with the introductions, we will have what we call politisk 5 minutes, which translates to political 5 minutes. The next 5 minutes, you're allowed to talk freely about any political theme. We ask that all speakers respect other speakers and the 5-minute total. Are there any who want to express their opinions?
Dear audience, honored members of the Student Society assembled for meeting this Saturday evening. My name is Eivind, and I'm a member here at the Student Society. As maybe some of you remember, in 2001, in March 2001, the 2 big Buddha statues of the Kingdom of Gandhara was demolished by Taliban in Afghanistan. That was an attack not only on images, but also an attack on the material memory of humanity. Material memory is important, and the evidence from the past is a part of the heritage, but also the space we are thinking in. If we destroy it, it will have consequences that is far-reaching and will alter how we actually see ourselves. And that was, of course, also a plan behind the attacks to these statues done by Taliban. Of course, Taliban is not unique in destroying material memory. You have ISIS in the desert cities of Palmyra, and you have several other incidents in history, not only done by totalitarian regimes and movements, but also by other groups. And much more threatening is also that the material memory and our shared heritage is threatened by neglect and the change of society. Of course, we can see this in our Arctic region, where a lot of cultural memories in Svalbard or Greenland or Siberia are threatened by climate change. But we can also see that, call it well-fed, rich countries neglect their responsibilities for the shared, call it cultural and material memory of the humankind. This we can see also here in Norway, where the government in the national budget did not grant money for the preservation of the Viking ships and have them made Norway victim of mockery by Chinese television. That is in itself not the problem, but the problem is that we actually have a responsibility and are not doing anything with it. It is not too many millions we need to actually deal with it. Only 2.1 billion is the cost for a complete new museum that will maybe preserve the ships for another 50 years. This is very little money in oil-rich Norway. I hope that we all can stand together and say that the destruction of material memory is a threat to a civilized world. And I hope that we also can send a signal that this must stop. And Norway has a huge responsibility in protecting our own history and the history that is also a part of a global history. The Viking was maybe from Norway, but Norway didn't exist back then. But the Viking is also a part of the history of not only Europe, but also Asia, the Middle East, Africa, and America. So it is in fact the global history that is a threat in Oslo at the Viking Ship Museum. With these words, I hope you will enjoy the meeting, and I think my 5 minutes has passed.
Concluding on that note, we will move on to the night's first introduction, which is by Gulabuddin Sukhanwar. Please give him a warm welcome.
Do you have my voice? Yeah. Thank you for the introduction. I think it says, if you start change, you have to start from yourself. So today I have to start for myself, and from the beginning I should introduce myself that you guys can pronounce my name in a good way. Yeah. And anytime I hear that, any foreigners pronounce my name in a different way, I became in a way happy, because also I have the same problem. When I pronounce your names, I have the same problem. So it is not only me in the planet that is doing this mistake. So my name is Gulabuddin Sukhanwar. Yeah. And my last name, Sukhanwar, literally translates to speaker. So I feel home up here today. If I go over time, so please let me know. Understanding Norwegians, I have been thinking to what should I say about, but this 5-minute politics changed my way, and it got back me to the memory, my childhood memories from Afghanistan. I was born in a small village, Bamyan of Afghanistan, which has been discussed about the Buddha statues. Unfortunately, we lost those civilizations, so I'm from that part of the earth. And one thing is, it connected back to my memory that how the war and conflicts did not only kill human, but also civilization. I'm one of the people who survived those conflicts. Like, when I was about 6 years old, I got injured in a shooting. The shooting was planned to kill my father. And luckily, the wound was not that serious, and I survived. So today it is the first time that I speak about that incident in public, because my mother was so afraid, and that she never wanted us to talk about that incident or recall it again. So I keep that in my mind all the time. But today, this evening, suddenly it connected back to my memory, to Buddha statue that we lost, and it's so that is why I wanted to mention it here. Sometimes we need to, remind ourselves that what has been done in our heritage, civilizations, and those shared values that we had. Yeah. So coming back to the topic, understanding Norwegian, things looked different from which side you look at it. I came to Norway as an asylum seeker, and for me, I think Norway looks much different, than an exchange student. Because it is really, where are you and how do you came, things looks much different. Like here today, student Samfundsmøte represent a different Norway than politicians. If you go to a primary school, you will get totally a different image of Norway. Talking to a social worker who invests her time or his time supporting a minor refugee to feel home, that is another side of Norway. It is totally different. Or looking to the politicians sending the minor refugees back home, Afghanistan or any other part of the world, that is also another path. So things look very much different, which perspective we have. Like most things, when it comes about Norway, people say, okay, Norwegians are very preserved and, they don't want to talk, and let us start a campaign, sit next to Norwegian on the bus. These things are, it is all around, but to understand a culture, a society, or a country, it is not only that. We need to, each one of you here today, represent a Norway. For me, Norway, when I was an asylum seeker living in the refugee camp in north of Norway, that was totally different than when I got a scholarship and went to the Nansen Academy, studied philosophy there. So it was totally another side. Or working here in Trondheim in the literature house, it is another opportunity. I often been asked, about my Literature for Inclusion initiative, that what is the idea behind this? So I say that there is three things, it is inspired of three things that we have in our city. It is human diversity, and it is the space that we have, at the same time words. That there are the words, and we need to share it and share with each other. So that is why I think to understand the culture, okay, thank you, or a community, it is not only to see in a general way. Like Norway for me, when I read Henrik Ibsen with his play like Et Dukkehjem, it is totally a different Norway, or to read Knut Hamsun, it is another part. But also for people like me, who are much more connected with books, things, and words, life is, our life and things that we live beyond our physical, with our words. Like Knut Hamsun today, he's been judged what he's been writing and what he's been doing. The same is with us. So I, in Norway, I think that the most beautiful part that I experienced was library and books. When I was at the north of Norway in Vadsø, a very beautiful and little town or city, so I lived in the refugee camp and had nothing to do, so then I made a schedule for myself to be at the library from the morning 8 o'clock till it is closed. So for me, that was a side of Norway that beside all these problems, about the refugee politics and all those, but there was another side that I could feel whole, being with books and read about the history, culture, and language. But again, these things are, we can understand a community that if you work with different parts of it and look at it, that how things are. There's not only one side that we can see, okay, that the politician, one party, or one side of the community. So to conclude my introductory talk, is for me a glorious diversity which represents here this evening and outside this building. It represents Norway and my understanding that today, when we are here, talking about the Buddha statues in Bamyan, it is something that this diversity and this common values brings us together, and the concept of, this majority and minority or immigrant or this are not appropriate any longer, because it is time that we go back to our roots, our shared humanity based on mutual respect, diversity, and pluralism. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julian, and thank you also to Gulabudin as well. I look forward to getting to know you better after the break. Before we head into the break, we are honored to have here the Student Society's very own symphony orchestra with us to give us some cultural inputs. Please give them a warm welcome.
Verde Storsal, honored Storsal. I understand we're doing this in English. We are the Student Society Symphony Orchestra, better known as Symfork, and we are all members. And I would like to introduce what we're going to play tonight with a story about my mother. She was born in the 60s, and she lived in a small village in the north of Norway, in Troms, called Sørreisa. And when she was 14 years old, there was a movie released called High Sommer in Norwegian, or Jaws in English. And she saw this movie in the local cinema, the Bygdekino in Sørreisa, which was in the gymnastics hall in the school. And one of her friends, who was 1 year older than her, was then 13 years old. When she went home from the cinema, she had to cross the river in this small village in northern Norway. And she barely dared to, because she was so afraid that there might be sharks under the bridge. So this is how scary this movie is. And it's absolutely not relevant to the topic of this meeting, but we are going to play an overture from Jaws. We're also going to play an overture from the movie A Nightmare Before Christmas. Because like everyone else, we like to talk about ourselves in Symfork, and so we rather selfishly using this as a publicity stunt, as well as playing some music for you, because we have a concert on Halloween on the 31st, where we're going to play this and also some other scary music. So if you would like to come and be more scared then, you can come on the 31st at 7 o'clock. And until then, we're now going to play an overture from Jaws and an overture from, what's it called? Nightmare Before Christmas. And of course, as always, we have with us our eminent conductor, Gavin David Lee.
Thank you very much to our very own symphony orchestra. We will now take a break for about 10 minutes and meet back here in Storsalen at 8:20. 30 minutes or so will just be sofa chats with the lecturers, with Julian and Gulabudin.
Thank you.
So I think we'll just start with the question: why did you choose to come to Norway? What was so special about Norway that you chose to come here?
Me. Thank you very much. As I have said, I came as an asylum seeker in Norway, so it was in 2013. In Afghanistan, I got, as a writer and activist, I got problem, and then had to leave the country and leave all my belongings and loved ones behind. So, to be honest, Norway is not that much popular in Afghanistan. And only the thing I remember, it was when I was in grade 4 at school. So in the geography subject, we read about different countries, and it didn't come to Norway. And our teacher, I remember, he was saying us, that there is a country, it has a 24-hour sun and dark. And then we were making love of him and, fun about him, that how it is possible in this earth, that the sun is not coming, for 3 months and there is no light. Then I had no more idea about this country. Then when I came to Europe, arrived as an asylum seeker, then talking to my friends, and then they said, okay, there's another country, like Sweden and others, but also why you don't want to go to Norway? I said, what is good in Norway? They said, it is a beautiful country, beautiful landscapes, and good opportunities about education and others. But it is challenging for asylum seekers to obtain asylum. As a person, I really like to get challenges, and I want to go for the hard job. So I said, okay, why not? Then they said, okay, Germany is better for, is more friendly for the refugee, and Sweden is also, but Norway is one of those countries, it is really hard to get asylum. But I said, okay, I will go for that one. So that made me, to come to Norway, and I arrived in Norway on 19th of March. And when I registered as an asylum seeker, it was 21st March, the day which we celebrate New Year in Afghanistan. Nowruz, we call it New Day, and it was for me a touching moment that I was still, registering in the police station and asking for asylum, and had no telephone to call back to my mother and greet him about the New Year. But on the other hand, I said, okay, it is a new life, new day. Let us take it as a positive, and the challenges are ahead, but it was my job to turn it into opportunity. So after March 2013, still I'm here. And as I've mentioned, I came from a country that went through many difficulties, and in my life I have learned how to survive, so still doing that to survive and doing something which means to me.
And what about you, Julian? Why did you choose to do your doctorate thesis in Norway?
Well, it was a very different stories than yours, and I think it's a very nice, beautiful story, and very nice that you're still here. Mine was different. I took my master's in Europe and my undergrad in Canada, so I was studying in Germany for a year and then 2 years in Spain. And then it was time finishing, I'm educated in astrodynamics, and so I was looking for something a bit different. In space technologies, when you take a PhD, very often you end up doing space defense, working for the military, and I wanted to do something else. And so I looked a bit all around Europe, and then there was opportunity in Switzerland and in Norway. And here in Norway is really interesting. It was a project at NTNU where they were trying to make more energy efficient buildings. And so they were very interested to look a little bit about what type of space technology could be used. And so I came here, met with the professor, who was a great contact, and so I spent 1 week in Trondheim before applying. It was a beautiful country in so many ways, and I sort of fell in love with the place. And I thought, I was on that bridge on the river, the one which is made just of wood. And I stopped in the middle, and so I looked at it, and it was in March as well. And it was sort of special light, and I thought I could live here. Well, I thought I was going to live here for maybe 3-4 years, and now it's been 9. And so it's a beautiful place, and yeah, that's why I came.
Kind of addicting place. Before we move on, I just want to let you guys know that I prepared some questions, but if you at some point want to ask a question to Julian or Gulabudin yourselves, you can do that by signing up at Synnøve and write yourself up on a list, and you can ask your questions from the lectern over there. Okay, so when you first got here, what was your biggest challenge, and how did you kind of overcome it? What was your biggest challenge, Gulabudin?
Well, as I have mentioned, things looks very different, and where do you come from? So if you come as a student, then there is an orientation program, and the Student Samfundsmøte hosts this type of meeting. But if you come as a refugee and asylum seeker, then things looks very different, especially where do you come from, like Afghanistan, seeking asylum in Norway. So I had a bit challenges, here, how to prove my identity, asking me questions like, hey, is it your real name? Have you ever had any other names? Those questions looks very simple, but at the same time, you get doubt on yourself that am I saying something that it is not real or is not true, that they are asking me, why, Have you ever had any other name? Is it your real name? Are you sure about it, So as a person, I was a bit afraid of police, because it is not in Norway. In Afghanistan, I grew up in the time that we had this civil war, and they were all militia group. We didn't have any sort of police establishment system. And the first time I heard about the police, the worst, it was in a book, English, he's a police officer, and then we translated, and I didn't know what it means. Then I heard an Indian movie that said that, the police came and took a guy and put what is called?
Handcuffs.
Yeah, handcuffs on him. So I thought, okay, police. After that, when we established Afghanistan after 2001, then we got a police department, but that was so crap, people who are addicted to many things, use drugs and all. People who cannot do anything in the community, then they go to police. So it is totally different, and in that context, I was really afraid of police. Anytime I went to here also, anytime they were asking me to go to police department for any registration or something, then those memories are coming back. I know the police are very kind here in Norway, people, But so it was my first time, and I was in the police office asking for asylum, so things were very different. And of course, it was cold winter in March. And then I ended up in north of Norway, Vadsø, which is totally different. And the city was very small, and it was challenging, but...
You came to Vadsø?
Yeah, so I was in Vadsø for a year. And I'm very happy that I was there, because I lived a very different lifestyle and experienced another part of Norway. And the thing which I really remember, it was the public library that saved my life, or I call it as a lifesaver. I used to go there every day from 8 o'clock, till it's closed, and then reading and trying to find, to get to contact with locals. And as you have clearly said, it is in Norway, in order to make contact, then you need a sort of framework. There should be a meeting or a gathering, then otherwise it is sort of... So I have to go through these things to make friends. But still I'm here, and yeah.
And what about you, Julian? What was your first cultural shock?
Well, again, it's a very different reality. Maybe I just comment on one thing about this: the fact that all of the immigration paper are handled by the police in Norway. This is something that, through that work, I've been a little bit critical to, for the exact reason that you've explained now, that many people come from abroad and they see police officers not as someone that they can trust. In many, many countries around the world, police officers are very corrupt, and it's not a place where you feel safe. And I think that I've been saying it again and again when I have the opportunity, that it may not be the most efficient way to creating a good relationship in the beginning. I was at the police office again on Friday, actually. Every 2 years, as a permanent resident, you need to register, you need to renew your card, and then you feel kind of, in a way, you can feel a little bit unwelcome, which is weird, because actually it should be a positive side. Anyway, I can talk about this a bit more. I will be at Edgard if you want to know. But my first contact in Norway was actually quite nice, but I was struggling, as I said in my lectures, into really getting this first contact with people. I felt that, I come from a place where you acknowledge a lot of people if you come into a room. So you're going to smile, or you're going to nod, or you're going to... And I felt that when I was trying to do this, Norwegians would go down or go away from me. And I thought, what is it that I'm doing wrong? Yeah. And my philosophy has always been to try to understand the locals. And this is what I did here as well. It took a while. And I felt that Norwegians were very welcoming, but you needed to change the way you would interact with people. A bit what I said.
So did you find them rude, the Norwegians? Or?
Well, many foreigners coming into Norway for tourism may feel that Norwegians are rude because the way Norwegians would behave is interpreted differently in other cultures. I make a conscious effort to try not to feel that people are rude when I'm the guest in a country. So I didn't feel that Norwegians were rude, but I deeply felt that it was different and that I needed to change my way of interacting with people and how I would do it.
What about you, Gullabudin, when you first started to make contacts with Norwegians? How did you find them? Did you find them open or closed off? Or?
I'm quite agree with Julian. As I said, it is the way how we make contacts and what is our code of contact, how we approach to people. It is different. But I can say, sometimes we have prejudgment in our minds, Like anytime you say where he or he is from, and then things change. Like I remember, in Facebook group, there was one Facebook group we were talking, jeg snakker litt norsk, so people were saying. So I sent a friend request to someone, and then I got a message in my inbox and said, hey, if you want to convert me, so please, it is not the right place. I look at myself back, I said, how did, this person could conclude that I'm converting her or his? Because I have never talked about religious and nothing is there. And I asked her, how do you come to this question, that I'm trying to convert you? She said, I went to your Facebook page and I saw that there were all Arabic alphabet. Do I write in Farsi? Farsi is my language. So this, sometimes we have prejudgment in our mind. I can say once, in the school, and I saw in our schedule that tomorrow there is going to come a vikar. Vikar. So I just got it as a name, and I said, okay, put it in my own way of interpreting, and I said, okay, it is vikar, and it looks like a name for a man. So the next morning, I went to school, and then there was a lady, a teacher, and came there, and she, I said, vikar, and I'm looking to my list, and there is vikar, and I read it in my own way, as you did my name, vikar, and there is a woman, and probably she wrote her name Hanya or whatever. And then I told her, are you vikar? Are you vikar? Yeah, I am vikar. And again, it is, it is vikar. But he is Hanya, she is Hanya. And then, I waited till it comes to the break, and I went to her and I said, are you vikar? Are you vikar? She said, yes, I am vikar. But who is Hanya? I said, my name. So this is, she explained to me what vikar means, that I'm today replacing another teacher. So what I mean, most of the time we have prejudgment about people. Like me, I'm coming from Afghanistan, a Muslim, then things looks very differently, and the people's judgment about me is very different than you. As I have said, like when it put it in the immigration context, which is much more about travel, then traveling is also much more dominated about the country you were born. So many parts of the world, population of the world are not allowed to move freely. So even making contacts, it is much more sometimes, but those things, it's up to us, that we allow those prejudgments to put between us barrier or break them down. But as you have said, once you get to know Norwegians, then they are very open and genuine, friendly. I have many good Norwegian friends. But things looks very differently, and the way they look at me, he is a new guy, a refugee, a Muslim from Afghanistan. So yeah.
Now Tyler Stewart can prepare your question, and I would just remind everyone that it's still possible to ask or sign up for a question list. So moving a bit further on, when you first started to socialize with Norwegians, how did you get to know your first Norwegian? How did you bag your first Norwegian? Well, how did you get your first Norwegian friend? Platonic friend.
Norway is a beautiful country, by the way. I very much like get to know Norwegians. It was through getting involved in different activities. For my own part, the first year I thought that this house was very special, and so I went and I asked if I could work at Edgar, and it was not that common at the time for people that couldn't speak a word of Norwegian to be working voluntarily in the house. I think it's changed a bit now, but so I was one of the first one that really wanted to get there, and then going into that bubble, then it was much easier to get to know people, and then also it's not just within the bubble. You need to really work first, and it's a bit, you need to build up trust. And I think that maybe that's what you started to talk about, something that I fast forward on my presentation, but you need to build trust quite a lot with Scandinavians, Norwegians, before you can actually do things together more than in other cultures. And one of the ways to build trust is to do something common together, practical, or physical sufferance. Yeah, Norwegians, the first team building we had, we were going to have a dinner with the group where I was working. And then they said, well, you know, you're welcome to come. It's a Friday night at 4 o'clock. But the only thing is that it was on Bymarka. And then you needed to cross-country ski for 20 kilometers to get to the dinner. And this was because I realized afterwards Norwegians need to suffer before they enjoy life. Yeah? So suffer first, do something practical with Norwegians, and for you Norwegians as well, that maybe is challenging to come to another city if you're a first-year student and manage the challenge to make friends. This is how you need to get involved into something, do something practical, and then friendships build up from there.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned alcohol as a way of getting to know Norwegian people, but so if they don't drink, take them to do something practical?
Yeah, practical, something practical. And it's not everyone that drinks, neither in Norway or in other cultures. And so alcohol is one great way of communicating and getting to know Norwegians, but that's not the only one. And do something practical, yeah.
So, Gullabudun, you don't drink. So, have you done much practical work with Norwegians to get to... Have you been to many dugnad?
Well, the thing is a bit different, you know. Not about drinking, but socializing has a different way, you know. I'm much interested in poetry and language, so my way of socializing is much more through words and language. And also, it is different, you know, from the country I came from. Like in Afghanistan, if there's somebody come in a new neighborhood, then people there, they all go and greet them and make some food and welcome. But totally in Norway, it is different, you know. You have to be careful for the first 3-4 months. Don't talk too much to your neighbors. So it is different. And my way that to get, you know, it was mostly about my story, you know, telling my stories, you know, talking to people. And it has always helped to talk to people. And I think my story or journey in the 5 years, you know, it was really helped me that I get, you know, in contact with people and I talk to them. It is always, I have friends, you know, who have opened their doors and welcomed me and have been always there to help me. And that all happened that I myself, you know, I reached out and talked to people and I shared my story and my realities, and at the same time inviting them to experience my reality in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Tyler, you can ask your question.
The Honourable Great Hall. My name is Tyler and I'm a member. I just want to start by saying, as an international student myself here in Trondheim, it's wonderful to see a full house of internationals and Norwegians alike. So curious to understand each other a little better. That to me is something that's, extremely positive. And to you, both of you, I have to say, you're somewhat of legends in the international community. I mean, Gullabudun in particular, I've heard a lot about you in the project you work in. I passed you in the street the other day, and I was like, oh, shit, it's Gullabudun. And I really wanted to stop you and have a chat with you, but I didn't. And so here we are. I'm grateful to get the opportunity to ask you and talk to you this evening and hear your story. Anyway, my question is primarily for you, Gullabudun, and you're welcome to not answer if you choose to do so. And Julian, similarly, you're welcome to add something if you like. But I came to Norway as an international student, so I did a lot of the things that international students do. I went to classes, joined my Linjeforening. Like you, Julian, I was also working at Edgar, making some kick-ass cappuccinos there, so maybe we can hang out later. But Gulabadin, I suspect your experience. You mentioned coming here as an asylum seeker to Norway. I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about the process of what it's like to come here as an asylum seeker. I understand there's an integration program that you can undertake where they teach you Norwegian language, help you with housing, those sorts of things. Can you tell us a bit about sort of the positive aspects of this program, what we're doing well, and perhaps also where we could do a little better? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I tried, and I'm, as a person, I'm very positive, and I was, trying, but I didn't, maybe some parts were in a way that another part. But coming to Norway, the process for me, it takes me 2 years to get asylum. I failed on first attempt, but winning on appeal when, again, there was lots of documentation, but things takes very much time in Norway. Like sometimes I say, Norwegians are very relaxed because they live 100 years. And in Afghanistan, we live 50, so half, and that is why we are much in a hurry, and Norway people are not. Yeah, so it is also a time different. So it got me 2 years to take asylum. But in that part, the opportunities, as I said, making contacts and building networks, I was very lucky that probably one of the very few, one of the asylum seekers who had the full scholarship. So before getting asylum in Norway, I had a scholarship at the Nansen Academy in Lillehammer. So I went there and studied philosophy and political thoughts a year. And after that, when I got asylum protection after 2 years, so then I moved to Trondheim, and I got Trondheim. So there is basically a sort of 1.5-year introduction program, which the asylum or refugees or immigrants, they enjoy supports from the department regarding the housing, and then it is a sort of 500 hours of language and social studies to go to school and study the language and to build life, and that is, I think it is quite helpful. And in that context, I can say that Norway is one of the countries that is well prepared, but the integration and to feel home, like it is not only having house, and money, but it is something beyond that. And there is one thing, we have a friend who is leading a poetry night in Trondheim, Olga, and she always says that, to feel belong to is not a matter of where we're born or where we live. It is a matter how much we make contact with our locals and our surroundings. So I think, Norway or Trondheim has given me that space, and I feel home here, and still I'm doing things that means for me my job at the literature house and working for inclusion, and that my work is to go a bit beyond integration, because this integration really sort of sometimes interpret in a different way. So my way of approach is a bit to go beyond that, inclusion, and to highlight our differences, because when I was a student at Nansen Academy and I work with the subject pluralism, and pluralism I really like, so diversity and pluralism, and that is my job here. So I'm trying to highlight the differences in Trondheim and celebrate it. Yeah. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, is there something that we could do better?
There is always, a possibility and chance that we can do to work together and share our cultures and share our the things which we have, to celebrate it as we do it now. It is the things that things makes better, yeah.
What about you, Julian?
I can add quickly. For me, it was a fairly well-organized welcome when it comes to all formalities, and coming, I was on a different type I was on a specially skilled migrant visa, so you sort of fast-forward into the immigration process. But there is a couple of things that were a bit challenging, and this is a bit so I got elected on the board of director of the university on one case, which could maybe answer your questions, where coming as a doctoral candidate, it was not allowed at the time to sign up for the Norwegian classes at NTNU. And in Trondheim, the only other possibility you had to learn Norwegian was to go at the kommune or the private university, folkeskole, I think it was called. And the problem was that if you would go to these places, a lot of people would come from places where they spoke no European language, and the pace at which you would learn a language was so much slower from someone coming from Germany or someone who speaks. I spoke already 4 languages when I came here. That you would just many of the PhD candidates would just go out of it, and then there was a situation where many PhD candidates that maybe would have chosen to continue to work in Norway left because they never managed to learn the language and integrate into society. And this is what I put my case when I got elected on the board. I tried to say that you are attracting very nice people from all around the world that are top in their field. In petroleum engineering at the time, 80% of the PhDs were foreign. But you're not giving them the opportunity or the right to learn the local language. So I thought that was wrong, and this is what I've worked mostly when I was involved here at NTNU to try to change this. And when I left 4 years ago, I think that it was towards opening up much more for PhD candidates. I'm not sure what's the situation today. So I think that this was one thing that, if you have someone that's highly motivated in learning the local language when the person moves to that country, you should really put it as possible as it is, so that these people actually learn the language, so it's much easier to communicate. So it's not a critic, it's just something that I feel that could have been done better, but I think Norwegians are very good at when something is pointed out to actually change the system and make it better. And I think this is what I love about the Norwegian society.
So we don't see problems, but we fix. We don't know that there's a leak, but when we see the leak, we fix it.
I think so, and I think that it is extremely challenging for a society that is not used to having a lot of immigration like other countries in more Southern Europe, to see these challenges. So and Norwegians are very good at listening if you come from abroad and you say, well, I believe that this may be made better for this and this and this reason, and if you have rational thinking, then Norwegians are very efficient at changing the system. Swedes, for example, don't have that ability as much as Norwegians. It has been more challenging to go to Sweden and start working in Sweden than in Norway.
I think Matthias can ask his question, and Frode van der Meren can prepare himself.
My name is Matthias. I'm a journalist in ISFIT. And this question is for Julian, first and foremost. In Trondheim, it seems that we have a problem with exchange students gathering together, not being able to socialize with the Norwegian. And from your perspective, it seems quite general that it's the behavior of the Norwegian. Might there be any other, this is a question, not a claim, might there be any other issues outside the Norwegian behavior that is making exchange students gather up in bunches?
Have you been following my work when I was working here, or it comes as just a question like this? Because this is one of the things that I've been working.
I was quite drunk up there, and I have to ask a question now. I'm an old man. I'm soon finished as a student. I have to ask a question.
Yeah, but that's really nice.
Because it was a good question.
Yeah, it was an excellent question, because this is exactly, it's an excellent question, because this is what a little bit that I criticize some of the part, that NTNU has a tendency, the way that they welcome foreign students, to create a bubble around foreign students, organizing activities just for foreign students, making in Fodder, I don't know how it is now, when I was here, they would always have something around foreign students, only foreign students that are allowed to come. Norwegians can't come, and then foreign students are not cannot easily go away from it. And so I think that in the structure, and this is something that I said quite publicly, you need to open up, and it's not about creating a bubble, just with the system creates a bubble. At the time when I was here, there was it was removed quite quickly, but at the cafeteria at Gløshaugen, they had put sign, and then they had put international table. And the thinking behind was that, Norwegians that like to go there, then they can talk with other cultures. But what happened really is that foreigners thought, we're not allowed to sit anywhere else than there. Yeah? And so everyone was there isolated. So yes, there is something that can be done. And it's to be more conscious, if you're involved, into not making a framework that would isolate the exchange student. ISFIT is a great organization. I also work voluntarily there. And ISFIT actually has opened their door for having also non-Norwegians volunteering for ISFIT, and this is a great way. I was volunteering there as well for a year, and it's a great way of doing so.
Yeah.
Thank you. Then Frode van der Meren can ask his question, and I would just propose that we end the question list there, if Storsalen can approve. Thank you.
Honored Grand Hall, my name is Frode and I am a member. My question is mainly directed to Julian, and I read your book, and it's very good in presenting how Norwegian culture may appear for, in particular, foreign visitors, and also how it differs for Norwegian people going aboard outside Norway. But one thing I wondered was, have you looked sort of into how Norwegian culture has evolved to what it is today, like how it is have evolved from like small places with sparse resources to more decentralized structure we have today?
I mean, personally, on my free time, I've been reading and thinking about this, but it's a little bit difficult for me. If I say anything there, I get all the social anthropologists coming to me and saying, oh, you're saying it wrong. So I need to be a little bit careful into how the Norwegian social culture has evolved. But if I take from the 10 years I've been here, 9 years I've been here, I've seen that it is just the coffee culture that there is now. The apps like Tinder or Happen and all, that has changed the way people date, the way people, it's become easier to go and have a coffee with someone that you may not know all that well than it was just 9 years ago. And when I talk to people who have been here 20 or 30 years ago, it was even more difficult. So I think that it has evolved. I believe that Norway is becoming much more urban. What you're referring to in the fact that traditionally Norwegians were very isolated from one valley to another one. This is one of the reasons why we have so many dialects in Norway, like in Austria, similar situation. We're isolated by the fjords, which made it that we knew everyone around. So when someone was coming into the valley and you didn't know, then you were maybe more skeptical towards that incoming person. And this is something that Norwegians themselves feel when they move from one city in Norway to another one. Many people coming around 30, 35 to Oslo for career reasons, they struggle to make new friends in there because they are the outsider, despite the fact they're Norwegians. But yeah, it has evolved, but I can't say more. I can talk about it in Edgar if you want afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Gulabudin, just to broaden that, you mentioned when we had dinner that you saw Norwegian culture as something broad and expanding. So can you just tell more about that? You mentioned Ibsen and Hamsun in your...
Yes, as I have told you, to understand the culture, it is not a framework or one thing that you say, okay, this is a picture and that is culture. So culture is built on different things, and it is, a sort of history. And like if you read Ibsen with his play Et Dukke Hjemme, it is something different when you are reading the Knut Hamsun or just, I am a poet, I like poetry, that there was one form of poetry that I really were missing it, in Norwegian poetry, reading modern poetry. And then these days I'm taking this language class and reading some of the work from the Peter Doss. So I found that because in that time, the poetry was very much rhythmic and rhyme, and it was sort of set. So if you read his work, then you understand what I mean. So things, culture is very wild. For me, culture is each and every person is different. The way you interpret it, as I have mentioned, that through a politics, through a book, and through writing, through a blog, an illustration, a movie, it looks very differently. And it is how the culture is. And that is, as was mentioned here in different dialects in Norway, it is part of the Norwegian culture. And I think this makes Norway, in a way, more rich in terms of that, that there is a glorious diversity in its culture. At the same time, like even now, when I go outside Norway and if people ask me, where do you live? Then I say, I live in Norway. Then I represent in a way Norwegian culture, I say, they ask me about Norwegian lifestyle and I have to say something. So things, now Norway is not only Norwegians, who were born here, but people like me come as an immigrant or refugee, then you're also part of this culture and you are shaping this culture, like when I'm doing things like, from my perspective, writing something here or working and sharing my language, culture, this becomes also parts of the Culture here, yeah, so things that we are doing, and we're celebrating our New Year or any other national day, something, and those things are taking place in Norway. So that's, the culture is expanding in a way. It is not one form that we say, okay, it is Norwegian and that is all. So everybody and every people, like as I've said, student Samfundsmøte is another type of culture and history, like another department. So it is very wide, and to understand the culture, I think the languages, as you have mentioned, it is very key. And also to make contact, it is also, that is how the languages work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I noticed from both of you, you both emphasize cross-cultural cooperation as something good and something beneficial and something we need to work towards. We're almost out of time here, so before we leave the sofa, I just have to ask you, what would you encourage the international student to do, and what would you encourage the Norwegian student here tonight to do?
I think just to encourage cross-cultural collaboration. Of course, you can get much better results by having people thinking differently. You're more innovative if you have people in the same group thinking differently. But it has challenge as well. It's not just about putting people that are different into a group. If you do this, you're going to create most probably more problem than if it would be a more homogeneous group. So you need to have people that are different, maybe from different culture, but you need to have the tools so that these people communicate well together and then get better results. Now, to come to your questions, which was what exchange students can do, get involved. Just get involved into something, get involved into a group, sign up for something, and then really do it passionately, and then Norwegians will have high respect for you, and then you will very much feel, and then have many groups, one every night, so that you're active every day, like Norwegians, you're super active, you have something every night, and then your socialization will be well framed and well organized, and it will work very well. There's a great example in the room of people that have activities every single night as Norwegians, and that are very socially active.
What about you, Kulabudin?
Thank you very much. I'm totally agree with you, But one thing I can add is, if we all, we are very much open with social media, I see people who even people sit to next to him or her do not socialize, but taking pictures private, just putting in Instagram or Facebook. So if we be that much open to our community, to our neighbor, I think it is the best solution, because we are much more in social media and others, like having contact with our neighbors, making friends, looking after friends on Facebook, but the people who is next to us, we never want to talk. It goes to not only Norwegians or international, it is every one of us. So if we are becoming more social to our people who is next to us, I think it is something that probably will give a good result.
We have to move on with the meeting, but I just want to say thank you to both of you for coming, and give them both a huge applause.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. You can just stay seated. Just sit down. Yes, as I said, we have to move on. We will now move on to any other business, or in Norwegian, eventuelt. Are there anyone who wants to express themselves here? No? Okay. We, as in the board at Samfunnet, are always trying to improve our society meetings, and we therefore appreciate any feedback you might have. So we just, with point number 10, are there anyone who wants to give us any feedback on the meeting?
Yes, there are always anybody that would give feedback, and especially when the feedback is named not critique of the meeting, but actually feedback. Because this is actually, I would say, very great that you have this meeting in English, and then also can include a bigger part of the academic city of Trondheim that is international, that do not know and use the language of Norwegian. So I think this is actually a good example for something maybe should be considered done more often at the student society. So I hope this meeting and also the fact that we are almost full today could be a really good example for something to do more in the future. Not only once each semester, but maybe more often. So, thank you a lot.
Hi, my name is Aril and I'm a PhD candidate at the university. But before that, I worked for 4 years with internationalization of education at the university. And I just want to say that this is my dream when I started the job, that Studentersamfundet could have meetings in English. And I could go to meetings and then I saw there was 50-50 of basically 10% of all the students there which are international. So I just want to say that this should be more of this. And it shouldn't be like, I remember there was a meeting on the election of the United States election, and I had students from the United States coming up to me at my office and asking me, okay, where could we go to this meeting? And I said, no, it's in the Norwegian. It's not for you guys, even though you have voted for this. So please do more meeting in English. We need that. And we have been asking for that for many, many years. So I just want to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, back again. I agree. Wonderful meeting. I'm actually going to jump back to any other business because you were way too quick there. And there's one more thing we've discussed a lot this evening, and that is getting involved in organizations. And I'm working with this cool organization at the moment. You might have heard of it. ISFIT, anyone? Yeah? Cool, all right. Well, it's actually one of the last opportunities to get involved in ISFIT 19. Tomorrow is the deadline for the last opt-up. So if you're keen to get involved and do some of those fun positions in the festival, whether it's driving vans around, making waffles, interacting with the participants, spreading hygge or course, this is your opportunity. So go to recruiting.isfit.no and or .org. .org, right? Yeah, our head of IT is nodding, it's .org. And sign up, come along for an interview, and yeah, get involved. Everything's in English, so you've got no excuse. Awesome. Hope to see you guys involved in ISFIT. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, with that being said, we're moving towards the finish line. But before finishing, I want to mention a couple of upcoming events the board puts up next week. Tomorrow, TV-aksjonen 2018 is organized with people from all over Norway, raising money for a church city missions work to make Norway a kinder place. I therefore encourage all of you to participate in that. On Tuesday, we're so lucky to be visited by the Norwegian foreign minister for lunch at 10:30 a.m. And on Wednesday, the debate committee will hold a debate about the right to die, and the next society meeting is on Saturday and will be about the Norwegian defense capabilities. That will be in Norwegian, but I hope you come still. Sorry. I was out of breath, okay. Before finishing, I want to thank the following for organizing this meeting with us. Gullabudin, Surhanwar, Julian Borrell, styrets debattkomité, Hammerlauget, ISFIT, Studentersamfunnets symfoniorkester, Forsterkerkomiteen, Reshi, Videokomiteen, Studentmediene, Markedsføringsgjengen, ITK, Rådet, Lørdagskomiteen, Fotogjengen, The Security Guards, and Café og Serveringsgjengen. The meeting is adjourned.